John Sweeney with Christian Moueix here at Moueix in Libourne. Christian, could you give us a few words on the 2010 vintage?
Oh yes, I would say it's a winemaker's vintage, which usually I don't like to approach a vintage like that. Why? Because the weather conditions were excellent for everybody. And the typical weather condition was a drought. We had a very serious drought. Just over 2 inches of rain, which is a very small quantity for Bordeaux, in the 3 months of the summer. So the effect of that drought, you know that irrigation is not allowed in Bordeaux, which I think is a good thing, by the way, is that the berries were very small. The average weight of a berry on a normal vintage will be 1.5 gram. I speak of the Merlot. Cabernet Sauvignon is always a little smaller. People ignore it usually, but you know, on a bunch, on a cluster, you have as many as 250, 300 berries. So the berries were very small. What does that mean? They were down to 1.1 gram, which means 20-25% less than usual. This is why the yields are smaller. But the effect, and that's why it's a winemaker's vintage, is with smaller berry, you end, of course, with a smaller amount of juice compared to the amount of skin. Mm-hmm. Then, if you macerate for too long, if you extract too much, you end with wines which are extremely tannic and completely unbalanced. So the effect of those small berries, evaporation of water, more alcohol, more, of course, more alcohol, more sugar, which means more alcohol, more tannins, and sometimes higher acidity. You could wonder why you find wines with high acidity while the weather was beautiful. Mm-hmm. It was dehydration, and with dehydration, the acidity goes up as well. So you had to play with those 3 factors. The worst being the tannins, of course. And to extract tannins was the biggest mistake possible. And you spoke of the taming of the tannins, mm-hmm. especially in the Merlot. It was stupid to pick too late on one hand, then to have a long period of fermentation, too much pumping over, or high temperature of fermentation. So if you are able to play very precisely, and we have a brilliant young winemaker, Eric Noezasco, usually we decide to drain a vat by 1 day or 2 days. This year we were as precise as draining a vat in the morning or in the afternoon, which means really half a day. It looks stupid, you know, but whether you go from 17 to 17.5 days of maceration, it's let me say it's more than 3 or 4%, and that level of tannin can make a big difference. So it was a very, very precise vintage. And of course, when people enter that competition, or the bigger the better, then you end with some wines which are absolutely over-extracted, mm-hmm. and they lose their charm and, of course, the great potential of the vintage.
Right.
But overall, it's a great vintage with a lot of excess, especially if we compare to 2009, mm-hmm. where all the wines were so charming. So it's very different in style.
Yeah, so after tasting the wines, you obviously did a very good job of managing the tannins, as they were very balanced, elegant. They had a lot of character, each one of them, very unique in its own way. Is there another vintage you would compare 2010 to?
Maybe, and I know maybe some people will not like the comparison. 75 was a vintage like that with a small crop. I remember roughly less than 2 tons an acre, small berries after a very dry period. And you saw that in 75, well, you were young probably, but there were many overly tannic wines. And I just give you an example. We macerate at Petrus in 75 for 11 days. If today you tell the growers that a top chateau macerates for 11 days, they say, but it's impossible. you need to go 20, 30 days. Right. And some people say, I went 40 days, you know. Well, good for you. You see the results now. Those wines are maybe impressive, but they will be undrinkable.
Right.
That's the problem.
And what would you say or tell our customers why they should buy 2010 when they have 2009 already, and it was a great vintage, obviously, as well.
09, as I said, was very much in the style of 82, so seductive, very easy to approach. The wines were so balanced. O10 is very different. It's an extraordinary vintage with a lot of excess, and of course, as I said, the human factor added to the excess when it should just have tamed those excesses from nature. So if you're able to advise your customers to buy only the great wines, the best ones, I don't mean mine at all, no, honestly, no. To buy the ones which you like during your visit, it's more selective, then I'm sure they will enjoy, especially if they are young, because those wines will last for 20 years before being approachable. So if you have young customers who follow your advice, then they will make a great investment. In terms of pleasure in 20 years, or in terms of money, I cannot guarantee because we don't know the prices, and people will be very demanding. For sure.
Right. Well, thank you for talking to us this afternoon.
Always a pleasure.
Thanks
I
for.
will be at.
We'll see you soon in 2 months in San Francisco.
I think it's June 7. I'll be in San Francisco giving a testing.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. A pleasure.